So I think we all remember the Apple versus Epic saga, a giant game of chicken that concluded with a major court case that frankly went mostly in Apple's favor. But there were some positive pro-consumer repercussions, much to Apple's dismay. Well, who could have guessed it, 2 months later, Apple doesn't want to follow the damn ruling. What the hell, man? I know that they have billions of dollars to burn on lawyers, but come on. What's their excuse for trying to get out of it? Is there any real validity to what they have to say? And how will implementing the court's ruling affect their bottom line? Because following the money might provide some insight on what they're really scared of. The answers to all these questions and more here at Techonomics. Hey, it's Carlos, always trying to provide you with an insight on technology and how it's affecting you and the world at large. This is ridiculous. For once, a judge grew a damn spine and is trying to stop Apple from taking advantage of consumers, and Apple's still trying to weasel their way out of it. Let's get some context to understand how we got here. So, how did we get here in the first place? Well, as I mentioned before, there was a big lawsuit between Apple and Epic Games. Epic updated their Fortnite app in the Apple App Store to not use Apple's payment system, in turn keeping the 30% from in-app purchases. That 30%, according to Apple's terms and conditions, was theirs. So, because Epic Games violated their user agreement, Apple kicked them off the Apple App Store. This led to a giant ad campaign on Epic Games' part, concluding with a formal lawsuit against Apple for anti-competitive practices. Not wanting to be outdone, Apple sued back to get the 30% back from the time that Fortnite app was still in the App Store. The lawsuit wasn't too complicated and didn't last too long either. The verdict was given on September 10th, 2021 and had several different provisions. First, the judge determined that Apple is in fact not a monopoly. And while I'm sure there will be massive disagreement on the matter, the fact is that this is just a determination of one specific judge. Second, Epic Games did breach their contractual agreement with Apple. As such, they will need to pay them 30% of all the revenue that they took while the app was on the iOS App Store not using Apple's proprietary payment system. This totaled roughly $6 million that Epic Games owes Apple. And it has already been confirmed that Epic Games has paid it out to Apple in full. Lastly, and probably most importantly, or at the very least most impactfully, the judge ruled that Apple violated California's laws against anti-competitive practices. Specifically, they did this by forcing all apps on the iOS App Store to use their proprietary payment system on all in-app purchases. As a result, the judge ordered that Apple had to modify their policies to allow app developers to provide links to other forms of payment for services or a means by which to communicate directly with users to work around 30% as well. But here's the kicker. Unlike Epic Games, Apple hasn't fulfilled the responsibility from the ruling. What's going on? What is Apple's reasoning for all of this in the first place, and why has this become a whole new news story? Well, let's start out with the facts. First, it's important to note that the deadline for Apple implementing their change to their App Store, allowing developers to put buttons to forego Apple's 30% cut in the in-app purchases, is December 9th of this year. Now, Apple has responded to the judge, saying that this is such a complicated and multifaceted request that it's going to take a minimum of 8 months to implement adequately. The judge isn't buying it and denied their request for an extension. And frankly, it's very odd they consider this such a hard request to implement, considering that they've already allowed a very specific subset of apps to forego the Apple tax. Reader apps, as the tech industry likes to call them, are apps that don't really involve any purchasing. It's just for consuming content. Think of news apps like the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, or streaming services like Netflix and Disney+. Apple has already allowed these reader apps to not get hit with Apple's 30% because of many of their small profit margins. So considering that they already know how to implement the policy for these sorts of apps, how can they possibly say with a straight face, mind you, that they are physically incapable of implementing it with other apps. And while I think it's pretty obvious that they're going to appeal this decision and try to get another judge to overrule this one to let them have their way, I still think we need to look further into the issue to understand why Apple cares so much about not letting developers work around the 30% cut from the App Store. Now, it really shouldn't be a surprise that it ends up being about money. If you look at this graph, you can see that since 2017, the amount of money that Apple gets from the App Store has continued to increase. As of 2020, it totals a whopping $72.3 billion. Compare that with this graph, where you can see that Apple services, which the App Store revenue is a part of, has continued to grow to be a larger and larger part of the total Apple revenue. Basically, it seems pretty clear that Apple has continued to grow this part of their business, so much so that it has now become one of their biggest verticals. Because of that, they are extremely protective of it. They know that by implementing the judge's orders to allow app developers to link to other payment methods, they will lose a significant percentage of that revenue, which will hit hard. Frankly, I don't blame Apple for having that position and being so protective of this income stream. You have to remember that the amount of money that they have to put into the App Store isn't that much. Yes, they have to build and maintain their servers, but that's actually very little in comparison to the amount of money that they take in. So it makes total sense that they're going to be so protective. That said, it's the government's job to make sure that they're following the law. And given that this policy of giving Apple 30% without any sort of workaround is obviously violating anti-competitive practices, we should all be on board with making sure that Apple is playing fairly and following the law. Hey guys, thanks for watching another video. Please hit that like button. It's always very much appreciated. Also, comment down below with what you think about Apple trying to get out of doing what the judge has ordered. Do you think that they'll be able to get out of it, or will the courts stand their ground and force Apple to play by the rules? Really looking forward to seeing you guys' responses. As always, it's Carlos from Techonomics, over and out.